Hi, welcome to another episode of Practical Organic Living. In today's episode, we'll be planting out basil transplants. These transplants were started a couple weeks ago from what you see here into here. So this is what you should expect after 2 weeks of starting basil seedlings. They grow quite quick after they start germinating. And this tray over here is what I just planted out yesterday. And if you come over here and take a look at this, you can see that the basil seedlings have also started to germinate. Once they have germinated, in a week you should expect the basil seeds to grow about this big. And within another week, you should actually really expect the basil seedlings to grow to about this size if your temperatures are in the high 70s or 80s. So right now, I'm gonna take you over to the area of garden where we'll be transplanting out our basil transplants. I have here 3 different varieties of basil. To your left, I have an Italian basil, Genovese basil, I believe. And the other 2 are Thai basil and lemon basil. And these are fantastic varieties of basils to use as companion plants, which I'll be doing right now. The most common question that I get is, when do I know when to plant basil? The easiest answer I can give you is, look how tall the basils are. Once they have a couple sets of leaves, these are the leaves that you'll see when they first germinate. These are not true leaves. What you're looking for is these leaves right here. These are the true leaves. Once you have a couple sets of true leaves, you know the basil is ready to plant. So another way to tell if your basil is ready to transplant is to look at the root structure. If you see the root structure here, they're protruding out the drainage holes. And that tells me that there's probably enough roots for me to plant this into the ground without shocking it too much. So right now, I'm going to plant it in between these 2 tomatoes, because the tomatoes will provide this with some nice shade during the really hot parts of months. And this will provide the tomatoes with some pest protection. So transplanting is super easy. I've never actually hardened off my basil plants because they take the sun pretty well. So I use coconut coir as mulch. I'm gonna brush away this mulch so we can plant our basils into the ground. So the ground looks pretty moist, and there's some white hairs, which tells me that the tomatoes are setting out their roots here, but that's okay. We can still plant the basils into this spot right here. So basil doesn't really require a lot of fertilizer. So, fantastic. Looks like we'll get a lot of tomatoes this year. So you want to dig a hole that is just deep enough for the basils to be transplanted. So what I'm going to do is put the basil down. So as you can see here, the roots are pretty well established. They're not root bound, but there's enough root mass that suggests that these basils are doing pretty well. So I'm going to plant this into the hole. The next thing you need to do is to backfill the hole with the soil you just dug out. And basils are okay with having the roots disturbed. So you don't have to worry about being too rough on the basil. So once you transplant the basil, make sure to tap the soil down a little bit around it so that there's no big air gaps, and lightly replace the mulch around the basil. So this is optional, but what I would probably do for the rest of the basils is to actually prune off the top set or 2 of leaves that are coming out. So come on in as I show you where I would prune the top set of leaves. So as you can see here, there's 2 sets of leaves that are coming out in between the leaves, where the leaves and the stem join together. So by pruning the top set or 2 of leaves out, what you're going to do is encourage bushy growth. And you actually want bushy growth with basils because you get more leaves, and you can delay the start of flowering as long as possible. Another reason why you would want to prune your basil right away is because you want the basils to focus on root growth and not so much the leaves. Once you have a healthy root structure, you can harvest a lot more leaves, and that goes with any plants. So the next thing I'm going to do is actually water this in really well to compress the air gaps. So again, you want to make sure that you're watering enough so that you are saturating the entire area around the basils with raw water. And how much you water really depends on the type of soil you have. So in these raised beds, it's a pretty sandy loam. It's loamy. It's not too much clay, not too much sand. It's pretty loamy. So I'll probably just water these for maybe 15 seconds or so, because the soil is already pretty moist. And as you can see, we have pretty good drainage here because you don't see any water that's pulling around the plants. So there you go. That's how you transplant basil. So I've transplanted 1 basil out of 18 plants here. So I have a lot more transplanting to go. But before I go, I encourage everybody to take a look at our previous video and this video and get started on growing basil. You guys will have a lot of fun. If you like this type of content, make sure to give us a like and subscribe to our channel to follow us for more updates. See you in the next video.